monkey men were hard up for cash. They stayed up all night selling cocaine and hash to an undercover cop who had a sister named Jan. For reasons unexplained, she loved the monkey man.
Welcome to Book Time with Ryan. I am Ryan, and today I'm going to be talking about Don Winslow's Broken. Don Winslow is a very cool guy who's very active on Twitter, and I have read a lot of his books. I found out that I didn't read all of his books, but I've read a number of them. I originally was recommended Don Winslow's books by my dad, and really loved all the books that I read. This was the most recent book that came out, and I've been holding on to it for a while. All of the other books I've read are novels of Don's, but this is a collection of, I guess it's a collection of novellas. And that's a new experience for me. I've talked about this on my channel before, how it takes me a little bit of time to get used to short stories, the approach to either anthologies or collections of short stories, because as a reader of books, typically I get used to having, 200, 300, 400, 500 pages of development. And short stories start and end pretty quickly. It could be a matter of 10 pages or less. This was longer, so if they're considered short stories, they're 50 or 60 or 70 page short stories, which is a great length for me. It's not so short that I feel like I've been left off in the middle of nowhere, which is not necessarily how short stories are for me, but it does sometimes. You're like, no, keep going, I want to have more. This length allows you to experience a story and have enough time to really get into it before it ends, and it doesn't end out of nowhere. The other thing that I liked about Broken was some of the stories involve characters or situations from other stories in this book. So you'll see some characters pop up in other people's stories. They're not going to necessarily be the subject of the story, but they'll be supporting characters where they had their own story earlier in the book. Now they're a supporting character. I also suspect, but I'm not 100% sure, that there may be characters in this book that are from some of his other longer form books. I don't know though, because it's been a while since I've read those other books. I didn't go back to check. But there are some names or situations where I was like, did that happen before? Do I remember that happening? And I don't know. I kind of wanted to go back and look at a wiki page to see if those characters had come up before. But I loved it. I love the stuff that Don Winslow does. I think Don Winslow's writing's informed. He does a lot of research. He has a lot of connections. He talks to those connections. And he develops stories that are current, and they're not all dressed up and pretty. Right? Some of them address very tough subjects. Some of them are set at our current time, or when this was written at least. Don Winslow has another book coming out at the end of April 2022. It was delayed because of the tour that he had set up. COVID got in the way of that. So they delayed the launch of the book. That is going to be City on Fire, which I'm really excited to read. I don't have an advanced copy or anything, so I'm going to have to wait till it comes out, and then I'll buy it from Barnes & Noble and immediately start reading it. This is one of those books that I've talked about where I don't like to wait. So I'm going to go the day that it comes out, pick it up, and start reading it. And then as soon as I'm done, I'll do a review of that. What is some of the stuff that happens in this? Each story is about 50 to 70 pages. The stories are pretty tough hitting. The picture that I used as my thumbnail is a chimpanzee who has a .38 special gun in his hand. He's hanging out in a tree. That comes from a chapter called The San Diego Zoo, where this criminal, he would rob people at gunpoint. He's trying to get away from the police, and he throws this gun in the chimpanzee enclosure. The chimpanzee has this loaded pistol and gets out, and the first part of the story is them trying to negotiate the surrender of the chimpanzee, whose name is Champ. So that's where my picture came from for that. It's a really funny story. There's also a reoccurring character in this named Lou, who is a detective, and he becomes a lieutenant. What was not necessarily surprising to me is most of these stories ended on a good note. A lot of tough things happened through the chapters, but they generally ended how you hope they would, even if they were heading in a direction where you thought that it would all go bad. And that's almost the exact opposite experience of reading a John le Carré novel. I like both experiences, but with a John le Carré novel, it seems like it's all wrapped up, and things are going to be okay, and then shit just goes downhill and you're left pretty sad at the end of it. Sad in an appropriate way, sad in a way that was entertaining, and you're sad because you've become attached to some of these characters. With Don Winslow's Broken, I felt like most of the chapters at the end, even though they had some tough, hard-hitting subjects, ended the way I wanted them to. With the exception of the last chapter, the last ride. The last ride ended in a way that made me a little sad. I didn't see coming. I didn't see how it was going to end in a good way, but was sadder than I thought it was going to be. So I would say that this is a hard book to review because each chapter could stand on its own, and each chapter is great. It's a fun experience because they're longer than short stories. So if you are scared off by the short story format, I think this is a better experience. And it's kind of this nice middle road between a short story and a novel, a novella, but a collection of novellas. Don Winslow is a great writer. Don Winslow is active on Twitter. He's fairly political on Twitter, but he also is really good about connecting with his fans and supporting other authors. I'm not an author, I'm just a fan. I posted a picture of my bookshelves at one point. Don Winslow follows me on Twitter. I'm sure he gets nothing out of it, but he follows me on Twitter, which is very cool for me. And at one point I posted a picture of my bookshelves, just what you see behind me, the full shot of all 4 bookshelves. And Don Winslow does what I think a lot of us in the bookish community do, and he must have looked in closer and he saw his books. Now his books are over here. This is where Broken would usually be, in this little spot here. And there's also a blank spot ready for City on Fire. So his books are up there. He saw them and he commented. He said he was thankful that his books were included in my bookshelf, which is cool because I didn't call them out. They didn't stand out any more than any of the other books on my bookshelves, but he looked close enough and saw it and said something, and I thought that was pretty cool. If you haven't read Don Winslow, do read Don Winslow. You don't have to read every single book, but every book I've read of his, and I know I haven't read all of them, every book I've read of his has been great. Whether it's something that's related to the CIA or some kind of covert stuff, or it's related to the police, law enforcement, check it out. If you haven't read Don Winslow, this might be a good starting place just because you have smaller parts. But if, in fact, some of the characters and situations in this book and these stories relate to other books, it may make more sense to read them first. I don't know. I wish I had looked it up first. I gave this 5 stars. I loved it. I cannot wait for City on Fire to come out. I really love everything Don Winslow does. I may not agree with everything politically that Don Winslow says, but he's pretty straightforward about the stuff. So you have to respect that, even if you don't agree with somebody. And his writing is amazing. So check it out. Don Winslow. Broken. And at the end of April, check out Don Winslow's City on Fire. I can't make any recommendations. I don't have any connection with Don Winslow. But if it's anything like everything else he's written, it's going to be great too. So thanks. Bye.